And welcome to Inside Albania with me, Alice Taylor. Today I'm joined in the studio by Lulzim Basha, who is the former Minister of Internal Affairs, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, the former Mayor of Tirana, the Chairman of the Democratic Party, or at least part of it, and a member of Albanian Parliament. Welcome to Inside Albania. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
So the first question is, we were in Strasbourg recently for this historic vote, which has seen Kosovo take another step towards its membership of the Council of Europe. But you, as a member of the Albanian delegation at the Council of Europe, you tabled a resolution to do with Ukraine, which passed unanimously, which was fantastic. And, you know, there's one thing I like about the Council of Europe. It seems to have, I need to choose my words carefully, it seems to go further than European Parliament does. They seem to make decisions and pass resolutions and take stances which have more guts than what European Parliament and the European Commission does. So this is what I like about the Council of Europe. But I wanted to ask you a bit about your role with this Ukraine resolution, and also, do you prefer international politics in sort of the Council of Europe realm, where it's sort of a bit different, or do you prefer politics at home?
Well, there are two different dishes, completely different dishes. I know international politics also from my previous experience as a foreign minister. And of course, I know Albanian politics because I've been in it for quite a long time now. There are meeting points, and I think both acts that took place 2 weeks ago in Strasbourg are meeting points. First and foremost, Kosovo. The green light by the Parliamentary Assembly is the biggest good news for Kosovo in some time, quite some time. And it leads the way for the Committee of Ministers to finalize this decision and let Kosovo take its rightful place as a full member of the Council of Europe, which is great news. It's great news for everybody. In particular, it's great news for Kosovo Serbs, who have been used for a long time as a scapegoat by Belgrade, and now can enjoy the protection of the European Convention of Human Rights and the European Court of Human Rights, instead of being bullied around by Belgrade to fulfill its revisionist agenda in the Balkans. And this, of course, plays into our national interests as the Republic of Albania, to have the situation in Kosovo normalized, to defeat every attempt by Belgrade to introduce political scenarios that go counter to the region's aspirations for full integration into the European Union and into North Atlantic structures, into NATO, and to let people build a better future for themselves, instead of being dictated by agendas of governments, in this case Belgrade, but not only, also Republika Srpska, that do not share their aspirations, do not share our values, and do not share the long-term vision and plans of the Euro-Atlantic community for the remaining 6 in the Balkans. So in that sense, it's a meeting point between the international agenda and what I believe strongly should be Albania's agenda. When it comes to Ukraine, it started with my rapporteurship on this issue, confiscation of Russian state assets. There are more than 300 billion frozen Russian state assets after Russia initiated its unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine, which has caused considerable destruction. Of course, horrible war crimes for which Vladimir Putin has also been indicted by the International Criminal Court. Ukraine finds itself in a very difficult position. I'm very grateful that the United States has once again led the way last week with its package of aid.
Finally, yes.
But I'm even happier to see that after our resolution was approved, as you said, unanimously by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, calling for the confiscation of Russian state assets that have been frozen and the creation of instruments to put them at the disposal of Ukraine, the first country which actually moves forward with this is a non-member of the Council of Europe, the United States, because part of that aid package is also the resolution I'm sorry, the legal package of the U.S. Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, to authorize the President of the United States to seize, to confiscate these Russian assets and put them at the disposal of Ukraine. So this is a first act that followed. I mean, the vote in the House of Representatives happened on Saturday, and the following Tuesday the Senate approved it. This was 10 days of good news for Ukraine and for Ukraine's friends.
Do you think it might give the EU a push? Because they've been bickering for quite a long time about what to do with assets. And I think in the latest sort of draft, it was they will potentially only use the money generated from the assets. So, for example, interest on funds in bank accounts, etc., rather than the actual assets themselves. Do you think it might push the EU a bit?
I certainly hope so. And seizing the interest, of course, is a good step. In my view, it's not a sufficient step. I believe that the time has come to have full strategic clarity. And one can always learn from the splendid examples of that history presents us. You know, speaking with some of the more, of the better informed leaders of both political and military of NATO in the past few weeks, I was inspired by what a former Supreme Allied Commander of Europe shared with a circle of friends, and that was the strategic clarity that determined the course of events during the Second World War. You know, for a long time, the UK, Churchill was hoping that the US would be drawn into the war effort, but it wasn't until Pearl Harbor happened that this actually occurred. And Churchill traveled to Washington, met President Roosevelt, and they came out with a very clear message: Germany first. I mean, the Pacific Fleet of the US was still smoldering, but there was clear strategic thinking: Germany first. That was the first strategic priority. And 1 year later, the two leaders met again in Casablanca, and another strategic message came out of that meeting: unconditional surrender for both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. This is the kind of strategic clarity that is needed today.
Let's hope
Unconditional defeat of Russia in Ukraine is not simply a strategic goal to support Ukraine. It is a strategic imperative to not to see Russia advance further, or as the speaker of the Ukrainian parliament so eloquently put it during his compelling speech, compelling address at the Council of Europe, that other nations are not forced to stare Russian soldiers in the eyes.
I hope it doesn't take an incident like Pearl Harbor for people to wake up to this need for a bit more strategic clarity. I wanted to ask you about Kosovo. The Kosovo vote. I had heard off the record while I was in Strasbourg, you know, if Kosovo is sure that they will pass the vote at the Committee of Ministers stage, then it will be in May. But if there's any doubt, then perhaps they will try and move to postpone it. What have you heard? Do you think we're going to see a successful vote this month, or it might be postponed?
Well, I certainly hope that the Committee of Ministers will push forward, and my hope is that it will separate the issue of membership of Kosovo into the Council of Europe from other issues that are important and need to be followed up. In other words, to consider membership in the Council of Europe as a reward, in my view, is not the right approach. For Kosovo to be a member of the Council of Europe, it is first and foremost in the Serb minorities' interest, and in the interest of those who, like myself, see the need to decouple Belgrade's aggressive and dangerous agenda for peace and stability in the region from the day-to-day agenda of Kosovar Serbs.
Yes.
And for this, there should be absolutely no hesitation to push forward for Kosovo's full membership at the earliest opportunity, which is the 16 to 18 May meeting in Strasbourg of the Committee of Ministers.
Now, Kosovo's had a hard time the last year. more so not more so than in previous years, but diplomatically speaking, it's had a lot of pressure from the EU, a lot from the US. Kurti has come under quite a lot of criticism from allies. They say he hasn't contributed to stabilizing the situation so much, to de-escalating. This word's been thrown around a lot. I personally think a lot of this criticism is quite unfair towards Kosovo, towards Albin Kurti, but do you think Albania has done enough to really support Kosovo during this time, to stand up for its interests against this criticism? Do you think we could have done a bit more to support them?
I think Albania is far behind with its agenda of supporting Kosovo and with its agenda of projecting Euro-Atlantic values and principles in its regional foreign policy. I say this without hesitation. I think for a long time, for 5-6 years, Albania has veered in the wrong direction by considering and treating Belgrade as a reliable partner at the cost of alienating or creating unnecessary distances with the emancipated capitals of the region who share the same Euro-Atlantic values and the same Euro-Atlantic agenda, such as, for example, Zagreb or Sofia and others. Now we see what Vučić is after. Clearly, appointing Vulin as a deputy prime minister is a signal to his base and a clear signal to the West.
We don't care what you say, what you think.
This man was designated non grata because he's seen as a henchman of Putin in the Balkans.
Yes.
This man I will make my deputy prime minister. This is Vučić. Have no illusions. The man has told us. He at least has been upfront about
It's
this.
a finger
I
up,
will
isn't
be
it?
waiting for the right circumstances with regard to Kosovo and with regard to the rest of the so-called Serbian realm agenda that is being unfolded before our eyes. Mr. Vučić, for a long time, has talked the talk of West, but has walked the walk of Moscow.
But I've seen it. He goes to Brussels for these meetings and he gives a statement afterwards about, normalizing relations, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes back and he appears on Pink TV the same evening and laughs in the face of the EU and the mediators.
It's Putin unplugged.
Yeah.
It's Putin's show of the last 15 years, but with all the orchestra that Kremlin brings with it. This is Putin unplugged. This is a double-faced approach, but at the heart of this is the same regret that Putin has expressed about the dissolution of Yugoslavia, that Vučić has about the dissolution of Serb hegemony in the former Yugoslavia. He will not accept that hegemony will never come back.
Yes.
He is not embracing the values for which the West has invested so heavily. He is embracing another point of view. And he's wrapping it also, unfortunately, in the kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from some leaders in the West of the re-emergence of nation state above all other configurations as the answer to today's problems, which is a very dangerous trap for peace and stability, and it's a very dangerous step overall for the prosperity of our peoples. So Vučić must be stopped. He has to be told firmly that we are on to him, that since Bańska, which clearly was a paramilitary intervention, orchestrated, financed, and prepared by Belgrade, we are on to him. He does not desire to cooperate with the other countries of the region to shorten the European path of our nations, membership into the European Union being the ultimate destination of that path, and to ensure that all peoples in this region, all individuals, regardless of their ethnic background, can enjoy the same measure of legal protection, of human rights protection, of national rights protection, of economic chances, of the ease of capital and labor transfer and movement, just like other EU nations do, which should be the ultimate burial of all grievances that have emanated from the painful process of the dissolution of Yugoslavia, painful and bloody. No, he goes for the contrary of that. He goes for the concept of recreating a Serbian realm with Belgrade at the center,
Ukrainian
with Republika
MP said.
Srpska seceding, with Montenegro being used as the Belarus of Belgrade, And the prelude to this has been the attempt to forcefully seize parts of Kosovo,
Yes.
of independent country, and force reality of secession of the north of Kosovo. And this is something inherently dangerous to peace and stability in the Balkans. We should not wait for Mr. Vucic to roll his dice. We should stop him now.
And I
And
think
this is
Albania-
definitely Albania has a major stake in this. We cannot hide behind our privileges as a NATO member. We cannot hide behind the insurance that our close and strategic alliance with the United States or the UK or the EU provides. We should take our own steps. And that is why for more than 4 months, my proposal is pending in Parliament to initiate a yearly donation by the Republic of Albania to the Republic of Kosovo of military aid in the value of 50 million euros. It's there. Instead of being brought for a debate and hopefully for a unanimous vote, it's being procrastinated, which is a sign of Albania's lax and irresponsible behavior under the current leadership as far as our national security is concerned, but also as far as regional security and Euro-Atlantic architecture of security in the Balkans.
So Albania needs to do more, and this resolution, this that you've tabled in Parliament, should be a good first step in that direction.
Yes, I think what we need to do is end the tradition of folkloristic support for each other and for Kosovo. Let the football fans enjoy and relish in the sounds of patriotic songs, but take prudent and determined steps to show that for the Republic of Albania, any attempt to depart from the Euro-Atlantic agenda by any player in the region is unacceptable, and that we are willing to do everything it takes to stop such a scenario.
Now, from potential conflicts in the region to domestic issues, which is their own different kind of conflicts. Now, in 2025, we'll have general elections. It seems like a long way away now, but it's going to go very quickly. Now, currently, the Socialist Party are in their third mandate. The opposition is divided. There's infighting going on. Now, from where I'm sitting, it seems easier for the Socialist Party to just take a fourth mandate because the opposition is divided. But do you see a rotation of power plausible? What's your plan? What's your direction for this next year, which is going to be crucial?
You are correct. Your observations stand. But there is clearly a path. And following that path is a matter of will and vision. What is the path? The majority of Albanians do not support the status quo. The majority of Albanians believe that Albania is heading in the wrong direction. The majority of Albanians want change. The challenge of the opposition in such a case is to mold out of this majority of citizens a political majority. That this dissatisfaction turns into vote. That these people go and cast their vote for change. But in order for this to happen, we have to make an offer for change. An offer that is credible, that is realistic, as well as the instruments that this offer is not only brought to the citizens, but also carries them to the ballot box and earns their vote. And for this, the Democratic Party is investing heavily politically to stop the soap opera of the last 2 years, which has been playing at a high cost within the opposition, allowing Mr. Ram and his government a free rein, and to concentrate all our energy and all our attention to preparing and unfolding a program, an offer, as well as the instruments of faith that this offer will be implemented properly. The most cardinal of them, a credible team of candidates for the next parliament. So this is in broad lines what the Democratic Party is focusing right now.
And I mean, let me just focus on the majority of people are unhappy with the status quo and how things are going. And I understand it's a year away and it takes time to put these things together, but what do you see as being the most concrete and important parts of this strategy? You know, how are you going to get people to latch on to what you're saying and give them a solution or offer them a solution?
First is an analysis, a realistic analysis of where the country stands. And this, of course, shouldn't be an academic synthesis of what people experience in their daily lives, but a proper account of the problems that 11 years of bad government and corruption have caused to Albania, to the Albanian citizens. Economy stands out as the biggest problem, as the biggest challenge. Higher cost of living, a small and impoverished middle class, which is shrinking instead of getting bigger. A lack of perspective for Albania's youth. Albanian third age, the retirees, are the poorest in the region, way poorer than the pensioners of Kosovo. And vital sectors for our GDP, such as, for instance, agriculture, which still occupies about 20% of our GDP, and about 30% of Albanians live off agriculture, remains one of the most unsupported, underfinanced, and critical sectors. But so is the issue of free professionals, of the middle class, education, healthcare. All of these issues are currently being looked at by the best experts that we have, sometimes in cooperation with Western experts from the US, from Germany, who are helping us devise the best analysis and the best solutions for these problems. Ultimately, because this is a big topic, and I would love to come back here and talk about these separate domains that make part of this entire vision. But ultimately, what we're aiming at is to end 34 years of transition, of politics that has slowly lost its human soul and has usurped Albania's institutions and uses them for its own benefit and enrichment, and create the basis for a new political culture, a political culture that has a human face and a human soul to start with, that considers it its most sacred duty to return Albania's institutions to the citizens and to return these institutions under the law instead of using the state as a private property of the ruling party. And this is also a precondition to allow Albania to enjoy the full potential, in particular in the economic field. And I believe Albania has a tremendous potential to allow not only the current population.
I see in the south, I've seen, piles of apples rotting by the side of the road. So much goes to waste. Yeah. People don't know how to mobilize. I've interviewed people producing herbs who say we have so much demand, we can't keep up with it, but we can't expand our business because X, Y, Z. But, it's interesting, and I've said this before, when I hear you talk about policies and what you want to do, and you want to help the working class, the middle class, etc., your party is a centre-right party. You're affiliated with the EPP.
Yes.
But often, and I say this for as long as I've been in Albania and have heard you speak about various things, your policies seem more left in some ways. Is that a product of an Albanian situation, or... How do you explain it? Because I'm not the only one who's said it as well.
Well, I understand where the confusion comes from. But let me say, when it comes to fundamental issues of what the government should look like, our position is fully in line with the values and principles and beliefs of the family we are part of, the EPP. European People's Party. We believe in a small government. We believe in flat tax. We believe Albania should have flat tax and should have the lowest level of flat tax compared to other countries in order to create a competitive environment. But not only that, we know that flat tax fights informality.
Yes.
We know that, paradoxical as it may sound, we have empirical proof that once flat tax has been introduced, there is a higher rate of collection. Yes. Because a lot of people are giving up the temptation to work with with to double accounting. A lot of companies. So we believe in small government. We believe in low taxes. We believe in the power of the individual versus the power of government. But there are areas, yes, you're right, where we believe the government must lead. You mentioned apples rotting, onions, potatoes rotting. This is a government failure. This is not the failure of farmers. All over Europe and in countries that aspire to become members of the European Union, and even in Kosovo, where the process is still in its baby shoes, governments support farmers. Albania is the only country that does not support farmers. It does even worse than that. The latest scandal last September, it shows that it does not suffice to steal subsidies meant for farmers, but it even mismanages money, 70 million euros from EPART, from the European Union, taxpayers' money for corruption purposes. It has mispurposed and misdestined this money, and it's now a process under investigation.
Isn't it? The next
under investigation. So, yes, I believe the government has a role to play when it comes to, you mentioned farming, subsidies are very important. In our plan, we have two major changes. The first and most important change is a quantitative leap in the amount that the next government should put at the disposal of farmers. The second, which is just as important, is no discrimination, no bottlenecks. Subsidies will be paid on basis of production and not eliminating the kind of bureaucracy that exists now as an alibi for the failure to support farmers. The second one is infrastructure. Farmers have to have infrastructure. Main roads, but also access roads, but not just roads, also support with their irrigation, with their electricity, with their ability to build storage facilities, to build facilities that can help turn apples into marmalade.
Yes, yeah.
Instead
Or
of being
cider.
thrown, instead of being thrown away.
Yeah.
So infrastructure needs to be a priority, and
Yes.
will be a priority in our plan in terms of government input, government investments. And the third pillar in our proposal for farmers, since we're talking about farmers, is access to markets. A farmer today has a terrible time taking his produce
How could
to the
someone
local market.
Yeah, Debra, how can they
To the
they
local market.
bring
No.
it where the demand is in
The
Tirana?
infrastructure is poor. There are hordes of police and inspectors waiting around the corner to find them, to stop them, to return them, without the produce ever reaching the local market.
Yes.
Leave alone major markets or Tirana market. Leave alone regional markets or the European market, where it has been the failure of both the ruling party and us in the past to create the proper infrastructure to certify Albanian products so that Albanian olive oil can reach the European market as Albanian olive oil,
Yes.
instead of huge quantities, last year in particular, reaching the European market as
related.
Italian or Greek or Serb olive oil, with huge margins of profit being taken away from Albanian farmers, and the same for other products. So yes, I believe here government has a role to lead. It cannot just sit back and let the market forces work, because everywhere in Europe and the United States, farmers, by virtue of their the specific nature of their activity, must, and as far as we are concerned, will have the government on their side. Same goes on education. I believe it's the role of the government to lead in transforming Albania's education, in preparing the ground so that Albania's youth, your 5-year-old daughter that we met before we walked in here, she and her peers, and the 10 years, and the 12 years, and the 18-year-olds, they should have in Albania the proper conditions, not to simply receive a formal education, but to be prepared for this tremendous change that is happening in the world. And as far as we are concerned, we have to inject and invest on a yearly basis to create professional training, in particular in the area of high-tech and innovation. And these are areas where the government has to lead. The government also has to lead in the health sector, but in a different way. To allow Albanians spend about 1 billion euros every year, 1.2 billion euros for their healthcare. Part of it goes as health contribution to the health fund. Part of it is taken from the universal taxation because it's not sufficient to pay from this. Part of it is bribes that are paid primarily in the public sector, but not only. Part of it goes to the private sector, and then you have a lot of money going into patients and their family members being flown out to be cured and all the hospitality costs in other countries. 1.2 billion, most of it under the table, has to be put on the table. The healthcare system in Albania has to become transparent. It has to expenses have to be measurable. Albania has to introduce modern mechanisms of public healthcare management, because 1.2 billion euros is a huge amount that should allow that every Albanian is provided proper healthcare. Every Albanian, in fact, regardless of their income, of course, there will be a social component to this, but 1.2 billion, there you have it. That is a solution, and it's not happening because there are no reforms in the health sector. And this is where the government has to intervene, and we have a solid plan to do so. These are, we talked about these three aspects, but there are many other aspects which we are looking at. A huge one is the property reform, but that's going to take, I think, a special podcast. It's together with justice reform. These are the two reforms which, in our view, as a center-right party, as an EPP party, will make it possible for the Albanian individual and the Albanian middle class to flourish, and will make it impossible for any government, however bad, to mess with their lives and with Albania's prosperity.
Now, I mentioned this before we went on air. Now, we're talking about time, so I know this is a question that could take an hour or longer to answer, but imagine it's like an elevator explanation. You're in a lift with a foreigner who goes, "What's been happening with the opposition since 2021 in Albania?" How would you describe, so from the moment Sali Berisha was declared persona non grata until today, what's happened?
A war of roses.
Go. There'll be a bell when your time is up.
So what has happened is an ugly fight, which has been motivated by personal motives. And whenever politicians put their personal motives first, is the cause or the group, the party, and their supporters who suffer the consequences. This is what has happened. What we're trying to do now is overcome this damage. And the only way to overcome this is not through some kind of mechanical reunion, like it's being often called for by those who have participated through their indifference or through their opportunism in a divide which shouldn't have been a divide. People should have stood up for principles. Regardless, even if the person was not the historical leader of the Democratic Party, but it was me or whoever else. You have principles, you stick with these principles. Coherence pays off.
The greater good, not personal.
Absolutely. So now we have to overcome this. And in order to overcome this, it's not a matter of closed room negotiations for mechanical reunions. People have to see that the Democratic Party of Albania is serious about them and about the country's future. It's serious about providing frontal, uncompromised opposition to the worst government, the most corrupt government in 34 years. It's serious. You cannot be serious about fighting corruption if you talk about fighting corruption in the morning and you fight SPAC in the evening. This is complete incoherence. We have to be serious about supporting justice reform, about supporting SPAC and its efforts. We have to be serious about electoral reform that delivers for Albanians and not for a handful of politicians. And if we are serious about this, if we get serious about this, then definitely this will create the climate, spirit of gravitating massive political support for the opposition. For 40 or 50 MPs to get together and declare that we are now together, not only it will not have the same effect, but it could have the reverse effect. Together for what? For your own needs? To be re-elected? Who cares about that? This crisis, like every crisis inside the opposition, is a huge opportunity to show Albanians that the Democratic Party is capable of changing, is capable of embracing the order of challenges that they are facing, and also has a vision to lead for the future.
Now, I want to ask you a question as well. Looking back over the last few years, in my view, what's happened and the way certain people have behaved, especially in Parliament, in the streets. I mean, I had some foreigners who live here on the show a few weeks ago when people were setting fire to Parliament and things like this. And one of them owns a business, and he said, I've had clients calling me up and going, what is going on? You know, nervous to work with him based in Albania because of this sort of thing. These things have an impact. Now, I want to ask you, because my view is that this is not constructive, you know, but you, looking back, is there anything you would have done differently over the last few years?
That's a difficult question.
This is a question
to
politicians
wrap in a
generally don't like,
in a short
but
answer.
Would you do anything differently?
Absolutely, is the short answer. But if you ask me what, then we'll need much more time. Absolutely. Every time one revisits the past, in particular when it comes to political decision making, it's easy to see how in certain inflection points, moderation in a certain decision or a decision of a completely different nature would have shaped events, could have shaped events in a different way. But the best we can do when we talk about the past is learn and try not to repeat the same mistakes, but project mature, experienced, better leadership for the country.
So you won't be drawn on any specific thing that you might have done slightly differently?
I think if we went into that, we would need a much longer time.
Okay, a bit nearer the elections, I'll take you up on that. Is a consolidation of the opposition, the PD, is this on the cards? Is this something that you want?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You want all these factions, I'm not quite sure even how many there are now, you want these back together, united?
Yeah, it's more than the factions united. I want the people united around an idea, a vision, a plan, and to show all of them that not only do we have a vision, but we have a plan to support the vision, a credible plan. We have a believable way how to make it happen, and we have the determination to see it through. I think if we demonstrate this, all of our supporters will be re-energized and will follow the lead. But we have to lead in this, and leadership has to be genuine. It cannot be a hypocritical leadership trying to cover up personal interests. It has to be a genuine leadership. Albanians can see very easily now, they are tired and sick of the kind of politics that has been playing for the last 10 years, for the last 34 years. They can see very clearly who is genuine and who is trying to benefit from the situation. And there's no margin for hypocrisy here. There is no margin for a fake offer. You cannot, as I say, in the morning do something and in the evening do the contrary of that and expect people to follow or believe. You have to be coherent. You have to make tough choices. You have to stick with them. That's what the Democratic Party stands for. Unconditional support for the judiciary, regardless of political colors, of rank. People who have abused with the trust of Albanians, with their properties, with their money, have to face the law. An electoral reform that empowers citizens instead of stagnating the old political establishment. And generally speaking, a vision for the country that allows Albanians, ordinary Albanians, to live and exploit their full potential like they do when they emigrate to foreign countries, to Italy, to the US, to the UK, to Germany, and build marvelous stories of success, not simply a good life for themselves and their families, but champions of the societies in which they live. Sports, arts, science, economy, inventions. Why not in their own country?
Yes, I agree.
It is not, the country is not cursed. It is not the problem of Albanians. The government and politics is and has been for quite some time the problem. This is a diagnosis. We have to fix it.
And to do that, and before the elections, the best way to do that is together, as the opposition united.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as I said before, if
we
you
need
come
to put
together
egos aside.
around the table
Yeah.
and you say we're going to get united because this way, we are more than divided, without presenting an actual offer to Albanians, I don't believe.
No.
I don't believe that in politics 1 and 1 is 2. It could be 1, it could be 0, it could be minus.
It shouldn't be about personality,
It
supporting
should be
someone's
about the people.
personality. Yeah, the
What is
policy.
our offer to the people? The people are sick and tired of this government. They know it's corrupt. They know it brought criminals into its ranks. They know it's incriminated. What they're waiting for is the alternative. And the alternative has to be trustworthy, it has to be visionary, and they have to have the highest possible guarantees that we will not veer off during and in particular after the elections. This job has been cut out for us. And I think wasting time for calls for mechanical unions, etc., this is not going to work. People will be even more disgusted and distrustful.
What do you think people think when they see, I mean, I love a good protest. I'm maybe slightly an anarchist myself. In some ways, I like a protest, but I can't help but think that setting fire to the municipality, using things like this, setting fire to chairs in Parliament, trying to climb through windows, I can't imagine this inspires much hope in your average citizen. What's your view on this approach? I understand, protest, you want justice, you want change, you're fed up of this, but is this the right way?
Experience tells me that use of radical means in a protest, which is not unique to Albania,
No.
pushes away precisely those that you need most. Undetermined voters, influencers, who usually have a distaste for this kind of acts that tend to, not always, but tend to overshadow the primacy and the supremacy of arguments. It may, maybe for a short period of time, energize your base, but that then exposes the real reasons of those who stand behind these actions. They do not care about amalgamating a larger part of the society around the right vision. They care about showing muscles within the opposition. This is the wrong approach. This is politics for personal gain. And this is not the kind of politics that can take Albania out of the abyss where this government has brought it into. Albanians deserve a proper and illuminated debate on all issues that affect them. And so far, this government has evaded that debate by using this kind of actions as alibis for not having that debate.
But I've seen, my colleagues in Brussels when there was the incident in Parliament with the fire and everything, and they were laughing about it, and I was embarrassed, and they were all talking about it, but none of them could tell me why they were angry, why the deputies were causing such a scene. It was just the theatre took over, They thought it was funny, and they have no idea why. So the real meaning of the protest gets completely lost.
But people have a sixth sense. People have a sixth sense, and it's clear that so-called revolution in Parliament had purely private and personal motives. And we saw that it was immediately surrendered to the first deal, which is the amnesty deal, which is hugely problematic.
Yes.
Your colleagues' reputational media has by now disclosed, just like we warned, that the real purpose was to let about 80, in fact now they're saying about more than 100 people who were convicted by SPAC and JKKO on corruption charges and organized crime charges. We raised this, we rang the alarm bell that this was a dirty deal where corrupt officials convicted by SPAC were being released, and protesters that were protesting against this corruption that often took a toll of destroying their houses did not profit from this amnesty. This is the kind of dirty deal, compromise, or not even a compromise. It's a subjugation of a part of those who call themselves opposition to the main problem in the country, which is a corrupt government that leaves people hopeless.
I favoured the amnesty because the prisons are completely overcrowded. The conditions are terrible. But, like you said, it has been, I feel, slightly misused.
It's worse than that. 3 months, parents, mothers, fathers were kept in their jails, which are not a good place to be anyway, but especially in Albania. They're in a miserable condition, with miserable sanitation condition, miserable food. They were kept 3 months longer until the SP, Mr. Manya, and some of these people who pretend to speak on behalf of the opposition struck a deal to let more than 100 people, corrupt people, out of jail. So to release corrupt officials of this government, to let them leave the prison. They held for 3 months the fate of ordinary inmates, and they are now also responsible for a terrible signal. The signal is primarily directed towards the judiciary.
And there's probably
you
100
convict people for corruption, we have the power to let them go.
There's probably 100 people in prison now who deserve to be out, not
This is shameful. This is shameful. This shows that this part of those members of parliament that have led this effort have lost any moral cards to represent the opposition. They have, through their own actions, willfully turned themselves into obedient servants of the corrupt agenda of this government.
My last question.
And they also pose a risk for the judiciary.
Of course.
These people pose a risk for the judiciary. They
have a
show
track
to the
record.
people of Albania, but also to our partners, very clearly, what they are willing to do to accommodate their personal agenda. They are willing to damage the most precious investments of Albanians and of our partners, which is judicial reform, and the hope to end impunity and to bring equality before the law for all Albanian citizens. They have knifed at the heart of this hope, at the heart of this promise. And so this is a very grave matter, one that the Democratic Party of Albania will not forgive easily.
My last question for you. Ilir Meta. I'm not quite sure what he's up to at the moment. Do you think he's playing a game? Do you think he's potentially going to position himself as a kingmaker ahead of the elections? Do you think we could see him go to the other side, to go with the PS again? What's your view on this, or would you prefer not to speculate?
I prefer, this is the last question.
It is.
I prefer to cite a very famous quote from a movie everyone knows. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
That's all that needed to be said. Lulzim Basha, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for this week. You can catch Inside Albania every Saturday on Euronews Albania at around 5 o'clock on our YouTube channel or across all major podcasting platforms. Until next week, Mira Pavshim.